Thank you, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you back. We're now on item 5, the call-in of the Cabinet decision, Puthcall waterfront regeneration, appropriation of land at Griffin Park and Sandy Bay. So I will ask the Senior Scrutiny Officer to introduce the report and the role of the Scrutiny Committees in calling in a decision, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For members' information, the report starts on page 39 of the agenda pack. The purpose of the report is to enable the committee to consider the decision of consider the call-in of the decision of Cabinet on the 18th of October in relation to the report on Puthcall waterfront regeneration, appropriation of land at Griffin Park and Sandy Bay. In accordance with Rule 18 of the Overview and Scrutiny Procedure Rules in the Council's Constitution, 5 members of Overview and Scrutiny Committees and 2 Scrutiny Chairs have requested that the executive decision made by Cabinet on the 18th of October be called in. The Cabinet decision record, notice of call-in and Cabinet report are appended to this report. As set out in paragraph 18F of the Council's Constitution, the role of scrutiny committees in calling in a decision is to test the merit of the decision, to consider the process by which the decision has been formulated, to make recommendations to support the decision, change aspects of the decision, or invite the decision-making person or body to reconsider, to suggest further steps before a decision is made, but not to try and carry out those steps in place of the decision-making person or body, to come to a view in a relatively short timescale so as not to compromise the speed and efficiency of the decision-making process. In the recommendation in paragraph 9, the committee is recommended to consider the Cabinet decision, the calling of the Cabinet decision relating to the waterfront regeneration, appropriation of land at Griffin Park and Sandy Bay, and determine whether it wishes to either refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing the nature of its concerns, or decide not to refer the matter back to the Cabinet. So I'll hand back to you, Chair, to hear from the members who supported the call-in.
Thank you, Meryl. Just as a slight reminder as well to those who have joined the meeting and may have missed the start of the meeting, just a little reminder, please do not put your camera on or have your microphone open unless you're called to speak, and I will call you to speak as well, so you will know when you're due to come in. So if you could do that, that helps with the bandwidth. Thank you. I will ask the members who supported the notice of the call-in to speak on their reasons why the decision has been called in. And I believe that we have Councillor Hughes coming first in Councillor Alex Williams's absence. Yeah. Councillor Hughes?
Okay. 2 seconds.
No problem.
Okay. So thank you, Chair. So I'm going to read out this on behalf of Councillor Alex Williams. Thank you for inviting me to set out, on behalf of those signatories to the call-in, the rationale for the request for further scrutiny from your committee on the appropriation of land at Griffin Park and Sandy Bay in Puthcall. I would like to say that scrutiny should be seen as providing assurance to the public and to Cabinet and officers that Bridgend County Borough Council is proceeding in the correct direction. Scrutiny should be seen as adding value and strengthening the public policy-making process, but too often it is seen by some as an inconvenience or an interference. This outlook needs to change. Members will be well aware that we have all had representations from town councillors, members of the public and local organisations in Puthcall objecting to the proposals. I believe you will hear brief contributions from some of those representatives during the course of the meeting about how these proposals affect their community. In all fairness, the Cabinet report does not hide the fact that responses to the public consultation were overwhelmingly against the appropriation of land for the purposes outlined. Reasons including loss of open space for recreational purposes, changes to Griffin Park, concerns about proposed housing at Sandy Bay, lack of investment in tourism facilities, as well as the impact on wildlife and ecology. I don't believe these were sufficiently discussed during the Cabinet deliberations on this issue. In short, the members who have asked for further scrutiny would like to know why the appropriation of all, and I stress all, of this land is necessary to enable Puthcall waterfront regeneration. We would like to see demonstrable evidence that there was sufficient consideration of the representations to the consultation, rather than seeing it as a tick box exercise. We would like to see demonstrable evidence that the local authority has implemented the 5 ways of working in the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, which is clear that it must go beyond the statutory minimum. We would like to hear why the option of a reduction in the area of the land proposed for appropriation has not been considered. Finally, and this is a key point for me, officers are keen to stress that the appropriation of the land should be seen as a separate entity to the CPO process, the placemaking strategy, and that it does not predetermine the planning process. This may well be accurate, but there is also a recognition that the appropriation of land is a piece in the jigsaw which allows other pieces to fit into place, and that all of these pieces are inextricably linked. In my view, this dichotomy and contradiction needs to be explored in more detail and resolved in your deliberations today. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly present the rationale for your scrutiny of this Cabinet decision today. Thank you for the opportunity to give the people of Porthcawl a voice on this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I'm now going to turn to the members who have called in, but who are not members of this committee. So I have Councillor Williams, who is we've already heard from via Councillor Hughes. There's Councillor Martin Williams, Councillor Nora Clark, Councillor Philip Jenkins, and then the members who are on the committee are myself, Councillor Della Hughes and Councillor Amanda Williams, who have supported this call-in. If you've got a question or a statement that you would like to make, please put your hand up now and I'll come to you in turn. I can see that Councillor Williams has his hand up first, so I will come to you. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll make the same apology as Councillor Amanda Williams in case my signal drops out. Just really, I'd like to just clearly support the statement that Della read out on behalf of Alex. Clearly, I was signatory to the call-in, and I support that 100%. What I would add to that is, my concern is that clearly there was significant strength of public feeling in opposition to the appropriation, rightly or wrongly. There was a lot of opposition there, and it's clear that the redevelopment plans will have a significant generational impact on Porthcawl. It'll bring irreversible change to the town.
Sorry, Councillor Williams. Sorry, can I just interrupt 1 second? Councillor Hughes, thank you. You've just closed your microphone. Thank you. Continue, please.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry.
No problem. It will bring, it will bring irreversible change to the town, and such change may be desirable. I'm not against the plans per se, but all views, including objections, need to be listened to because change can't be imposed on the residents of Porthcawl. It can't be done to people. That's not a recipe for lasting and sustainable change. The residents of Porthcawl and all those stakeholders in Porthcawl need to feel that they have had their voices have been heard, and they have an influence, or at least due consideration has been given to their opinion. My concern really is that, having observed the cabinet meeting, I'm concerned that the public may have looked at that cabinet meeting and said, well, look, this was a predetermined, a pre-agreed decision that was rubber stamped by the councillors. And to that end, I'd be very interested to understand what the cabinet member for regeneration thinks about these plans. Is she leading from the front, or is she just a passenger on a train driven by others? But in summary, I'm of the view that the decision is of generational significance to Porthcawl, and the high level of public concern were not properly or adequately discussed or addressed, and they were in fact played down. They were put across as though the public don't understand. It's a misunderstanding. This is just a technical device, as Alex said in his statement. But it's clearly not just that. It is a significant decision. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it, would we? So it just, in summary, sorry, there's a bit of noise in the background. But in summary, I just think that the public concern should be properly listened to, given due respect, and officers and cabinet should look again and reassure us as councillors, but more importantly, the public and the residents of Porthcawl that this is the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'm going to bring Councillor Amanda Williams in next, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I also apologise? We're currently abroad, so I'm on a 5G, so I've got no camera just to support the signal here. So I won't reiterate what the other two speakers have said, but simply to say I supported the call-in simply because of the number of emails us councillors have received from Porthcawl residents who have raised concerns and asked valid questions regarding the regeneration plans. The strength of feeling is clear for all to see, and as councillors we have a duty to listen to the public and represent them. By calling this decision, I believe that I am listening to them and I am representing them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Jenkins, can I bring you in next, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Do you wish me to put the camera on, or?
If you wish.
Oh, no. Well, I'd rather not at the moment.
No problem then.
I've not had my head on. No, basically, I'm a non-resident, obviously, of Porthcawl, but I've had a number of concerns from the residents of the Llinby Valley and surrounding areas. My major concern, the appropriation of such a large amount of land would open the floodgates for housing. There is, within this plan itself, we have one opportunity to get it right. And as I've known over the decades, some of the regeneration plans within our other towns have failed to deliver the vision that was supposed to be there. As I said, Porthcawl is a jewel in our crown and needs to be treated as such. Therefore, it has opportunities to regenerate it in a sympathetic and a manner that will benefit not only the short term, but the long-term future of a wonderful seaside resort that spans both as far as Llantwit Major, Ogmore by Sea, to Scare, along nearly, except integrated by, disturbed by the steelworks, etc. We have surrounding areas that benefit from a much tourism. There is not an emphasis here placed upon a tourist resort, and that's what is historically history is all really about. Prior to that, it was a major port in the early 1800s to the late 1800s, with a seaport that took up Sandy Bay, I believe. Not Sandy Bay, sorry. The car park area that we call it now, Salt Lake. Porthcawl needs a vision, and it needs in-depth consultation from the people of Porthcawl to see what they need. Porthcawl has neither no heavy industry or manufacturing facilities, etc. It's a seaside report, and to appropriate so much land and based upon housing would spoil, certainly for the future generations, this wonderful seafront that we have. We need to emphasise more on the leisure. Wales, etc., I know this may not be timed, has no major theme parks or wet and wild, anything. There's something there. Given the decades you've had to look at this, we need to get it right. An appropriation of all this land based upon a lot of housing is simply not acceptable. I need that the people of Porthcawl to be consulted properly with their vision of what they need. And to stick an aircraft hangar up masquerading as a supermarket is not the answer to regeneration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Williams, I can see that you've got your hand up again. I'm going to bring you back in, but very briefly, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I believe you're talking about Councillor Martin Williams.
Yes, sorry, I am. Yes, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, that's a legacy hand. I've told him to take it down. Sorry.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Lovely. Okay. If I have no other councillors wishing to support on this, I would just like to offer my support on this as well. It very much echoes the reasons that have been given. I'm concerned that there is a lack of vision in this appropriation and the plans for Porthcawl, and I believe that Porthcawl is the jewel in the crown of South Wales here. It's a fantastic tourist destination, and it could be so much better with that vision imbued in it. And I'm concerned that sufficient consideration has not been given to that. And I appreciate that we do need housing. I do appreciate that. And I've listened to the other side of the coin and the concerns from residents who are saying that there is a dire need for housing for residents who have been born there and are growing up and returning and are now looking for the first homes, etc., or for individuals who have lived there all their time, brought their families up and are now looking for retirement properties which are in short supply. So I am mindful of that as well. However, I think there has to be sufficient consideration for residents here across the board, and I don't think that's happening. So that's my reasons for signing the call in. However, moving forward, I can see that from Councillor Alex Williams' statement, there seems to be 3 areas of consideration. So the first one is for the members of this committee, has sufficient consideration been given to this project? That's the first one. The second one is, have the 5 ways of the Future Generations and Wellbeing Act been considered sufficiently? And the third one is that the appropriation of the land is separate to the compulsory purchase order and the placemaking. And is there sufficient separation there being given to that, or are the 2 being lumped together? So I think those are the 3 key areas that have been picked up by Councillor Williams, Alex Williams, when he's put forward this call in. And I think those are the areas that members should be focusing on. So going forward, if there's no other councillors, I would like to ask the Cabinet member to outline the reasons for the decision that was taken in response to the reasons given in the notice of the call-in, and then extend an invitation to the Corporate Director after that, or other officers, to set out the rationale behind the decision in more detail. So with that in mind, could I call Councillor Neil O'Farr, please, as a Cabinet member? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. As obviously some of you are aware, most of these decisions were taken before I became a Cabinet member. So can I call in the officers who can give you a lot more background information on this?
Can I just ask, though, for you to give us your outline as the current Cabinet member? You've been in post for quite a few months now, and I would hope that you would have a grasp on this. If I could possibly just ask you to give a short statement on this, please. Thank you. Okay,
so the appropriation is necessary for the local development plan to be put in which was agreed at the last council meeting. So that was part of the local development plan for the housing in Porthcawl. We had all the emails from residents, and what we did as a Cabinet looked at all the emails and asked the officers for us to do a site visit. Obviously, when you're reading things on paper, it doesn't make sense. So what we requested that we have a site visit. So the Cabinet members were invited. We did a walk on all the land, and it kind of highlighted to me how much open space we are going to have. And I think after the placemaking strategy that consultation took place, the number of houses have been reduced, and also the area for open space has been enlarged. So that's what the residents have been asking for bigger open space. So that has been done. I think we also did a walkabout with the local councillors last week. Again, walked through the site, looking at the plans, how much open space that there will be, and the impact on Griffin Park, how that would be extended. We've agreed as a Cabinet and as a council to make sure that before taking down the current tennis court, that new tennis court will be put in place. Obviously, we'll work with the tennis association in Porthcawl to see how they want that done. The tennis court will be fit for all weather, because at the moment they're not. Griffin Park will be enlarged. We took the walk. I didn't realise how big the Green Park will be. I can tell you it's going to be massive, and it will be green. What I've asked officers to do is we are going to arrange another walk for all the stakeholders in Porthcawl, so that they can see what the plans are, what the visions are. I understand all the scrutiny chairs were given a briefing about this before the cabinet decision. I don't think any questions or issues were raised at that briefing.
I believe it was after, I think.
Okay, I apologise. I thought it was before the cabinet meeting. Okay, was it before
I could
the
entirely be
council?
wrong, but
Yeah,
I think it was after the cabinet, but before council.
before council. Okay, yeah. So I don't think any concerns or issues were raised at those briefing.
Sorry, just to come back in, I do believe they were raised at the briefing as well, which is why we've asked for a further meeting on the matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I have to say, I was a bit dubious about this, but when I took that walk, I recognised that how it will enhance Porthcawl, although there are housing being built, but there are going to be lots of commercial facilities there and leisure facilities. No decisions have been made about what will go into those leisure facilities. I mean, I've got some ideas. The residents have given me some ideas what they would like to see. So although the appropriation was agreed at the cabinet meeting, residents will have opportunity to question the planning application. They can raise concerns at that period. But I think what we've made it clear with our officers who want to obviously work with us, that we are going to be involving all the stakeholders in any decision that is made about how we are going to go forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Farr. Just because I noted the 3 points that were made in the call-in, could I just very briefly ask you, do you think, as the cabinet member, that sufficient consideration was given to this project by the cabinet, and that the 5 ways of the Future Generations and Wellbeing Act were considered? And finally, do you believe that the appropriation of the land was separate as an issue to the compulsory purchase order and the placemaking plans?
Again, due to the emails received, I did ask that quick question, and we were given legal advice. So, we didn't just make the decision on hand. We asked for a site visit. We asked for some more legal background to why this needed to be happen. And although it is linked, it is 2 separate things.
On the appropriation of the land
and the CPO, they are 2 separate. The legislation, from what we had from the report from the officers and from the walk we did, I believe, yes, we have met the Wellbeing Act, the Generation Act, yes.
Yes, the 5 ways of it, yes. The
5 ways. Obviously, there is a high need for housing, and I think the 30% of the housing being built will be for social use.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, is that me that just went off then? Sorry.
No, I think that's it. Have I answered all your questions?
Lovely, thank you. Sorry, I'm having a few IT issues here, so it keeps going in and out sometimes. I didn't know if I'd gone off again, sorry.
I think a consideration about the project, I think this has been going on for some years now. This is not new, and I believe that Sandy Bay was earmarked for development in the development plan in 2004. So it's been in the development plan since then. So it's not something new. So yeah, I think it's been going on for quite a few years. A lot of work has been going on it, and I think, being a resident of Porthcawl for the past 30 years, I'm really pleased to see something happening at last. We've been promised regeneration for so many years. I'm glad to see it's happening. I think we've got lots of opportunities to work with the stakeholders develop this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Is that satisfactory for yourself as a response? Are you happy?
Are you asking me, Chair?
Yes, I am, Councillor Farr. Sorry. Are you satisfied that you've answered the questions?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'm just going to move to the Corporate Director, Janine Nightingale, please. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be present with you today for the call-in. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale. I'm the Corporate Director for Communities here in Bridgend. I've made lots of notes and I've listened to what has been said today. And the first thing I'd like to say, Chair, before I pick up and add to what my Cabinet member has also said, is that the really important bit that we recognise today is that we have not predetermined the use of this area at Sandy Bay and Coney Beach. What we are doing on Sandy Bay is appropriating it for planning purposes. We're not appropriating it for housing purposes, we're appropriating it for planning purposes. Now what that does, it's a legal mechanism whereby we remove its current use, and its current use is for a caravan park. So its current use isn't open space, it's actually a private piece of land, there's signs up there. It's not formal open space. So what we're doing is appropriating it for planning purposes. And then the intention is to do extensive consultation with the community and look at what can be achieved in this area. So that's the first thing I would say, Chair. If we talk about have we given due consideration to all the comments made by the public, for that I would like to say absolutely yes. That was a critical part of understanding about this appropriation. Now what I would say is, if I can refer you back to the Cabinet report, we included in appendices in the Cabinet report, Appendix 5, and what that does is detail the main concerns that the public came forward with. And we had over 600 responses. It was fantastic. Now I have my Senior Regeneration Officer on the call with me today, Jacob Lawrence, and Jacob read every single one of those emails. He gave me summary high level of every single one of those emails. We also supplied the whole Cabinet with a document detailing every single objection that we've received or consultation, and they had an opportunity to go through those. Now, of course, what we couldn't do because of data protection was to put those consultations into the public domain. So what we did is we wrapped them up into those high-level statements going through. Now, we absolutely gave consideration, and what we would say is that when people said they were objecting because of the loss of open space, actually, as part of this development, what we are proposing is to increase the amount of open space, because currently Sandy Bay is private land, it isn't recreation open space, and what we are planning as part of any development, what we have a draft placemaking or a draft plan for, is to increase the size of Griffin Park from 4 acres to 8 acres of open space, and to have a long linear park that comes right through that area. Now, Councillor Farr has spoken about Griffin Park, and what we want to do is to link Griffin Park to the Monster Park, the redundant Monster Park. There's significant trees and greenery in there that we want to retain, and then we want to move the Monster Park and bring it all the way down to the seafront itself. So a key part of this development is, as it goes forward, and as of course we've got to get planning permission for all of this, so none of this is predetermined, these are just some of the plans we want to put forward. A key part is that enormous part of open space, doubling the open space provision from 4 acres to 8 acres, and also the important bit about this is then it will be afforded protection for years to come. So what we want to do, once it's designated as formal open space, we can never then remove that designation. So I think that's really important. So not only are we doubling the size of that space, we're going to protect it. Now I'm going to call Jake in shortly to ask him to show you a plan of that, so you can see what we've put in place. So some of the other considerations were losing Griffin Park. Well, actually, what we are doing, as I've just said, we're increasing Griffin Park. doubling it, but what we do have to do, and I think this is important to make this clear, is we do have to take a corner off one of the bowling greens in Griffin Park in order to get an access into the site. And also that may affect the tennis courts that are there on the site. Now, two things. Number one, it's a disused bowling green, and we've committed to replace that with a brand new bowling green. And secondly, those tennis courts that are there currently, and we've spoken a lot with the tennis club that operates there. It's great to see so many youngsters enjoying the sport and getting taught and having lessons. What we have committed is to providing brand new all-weather tennis courts. Now, the tennis court in Griffin Park at the moment, if anybody uses them on the call, you will know they're not in very good condition, and unfortunately in the winter we have to close them because of slip and trip hazards. They're not all-weather. So a really important part of this development is we are committed to replacing those tennis courts with all-weather courts, and that's something the public were very concerned about in the comments. The third thing that came was the Veterans Hub, and we've got a Veterans Hub building that's based at Griffin Park, and unfortunately it's not fit for use anymore because the floor has deteriorated in it. And once again, we've committed to working with the Veterans Association. Let's find them a new home. The important bit about this is that we very much work with the community on these facilities. Now, if I just go back to the placemaking strategy, if I may, and talk about consideration more strategically, because Councillor Farr has talked about that Coney Beach and Sandy Bay have been in the LDP as a strategic housing site for some time. Now, what we do know about Sandy Bay is that it was originally compulsory purchased for recreation back in the 50s. It then became a caravan park for over 50 years, which ceased trading in the early 2000s. Now, when it ceased trading, the important bit was we protected that area for use in the future because it's owned by the council. So what we did was put it into the local development plan as a potential housing allocation. And it's been in the local development plan in 2004, in 2014, and it's now back in our LDP once again that was approved by council. That LDP is now proceeding to Welsh Government for an examination in public, and the public are welcome to go and critique and talk about Coney Beach and Sandy Bay if they want to. Now, when I started in post about 2.5 years ago, I did see all these plans in place for Porthcawl. But what was very clear is Porthcawl is evolving as a seaside town. It is an important place where people live, and it's an important tourist destination for the county. It's both, and it should be both. And I wanted to ensure we had a sustainable way of growing that community, because an important part of the Future Generations Act, which we have considered in the Cabinet report, and I'll get to that shortly, an important part of that is we consider all future needs. We consider children have the right for somewhere to live, right to have employment, right to have places to play, right to have education, and all these things are incredibly important. And we know there's a real housing need in Porthcawl. There's a real housing need for affordable homes, otherwise they won't be able to stay there. Plus there's a volumetrics number as well, and we can touch on those things. But what was really important, I thought, was that we looked at the plans that were in place and we came up with a placemaking strategy. Now, placemaking is very high on the Welsh Government's agenda currently, about the community having a sense of place. It isn't about housing, it isn't about jobs, it's about everything together. Places to live, work, a sense of community, places to share, enjoy, and it's all of those things. So what we went about doing was we put a placemaking strategy together that we consulted on last year. We had an exhibition in the pavilion. We then have 3 weeks of hoardings outside Cosy Corner. And we had a wonderful response to the placemaking. Now, the placemaking covers the whole of Porthcawl. It covers everywhere from the Grand Pavilion, right through Salt Lake, right through Coney Beach, and right to Sandy Bay. And what we wanted to create, and what we think we've created, and we've listened to the comments that came back from the public, they wanted more open space. So Salt Lake isn't part of this appropriation, but if I just explain what happened as a result of this consultation. We reduced the amount of land for housing on Salt Lake by 1/3 and have introduced a very large, long, linear seafront park, which is what the community were asking for. It's the equivalent of about the size of 2 football pitches. It's 200 metres in length and 70 metres wide. We've also reconnected Dock Street back to the town centre, and we've done lots of other work. And these were things that were borne out by the community. They've asked for it. So open space was incredibly important. An important part of that placemaking strategy was they talked about Griffin Park and didn't want to see the loss of it. And as a result of that, we've ensured that we're doubling the size of Griffin Park, we're connecting the Monster Park, important for ecology, and we're driving that agenda right through the heart of that development. Now, the placemaking strategy was adopted by the Cabinet in March. It was consulted on, but what I would say, Chair and Scrutiny, it is what it's done. It's almost put together a master plan for our vision, a very strong vision for the regeneration. At the heart of it is open space. At the heart of it is active travel. At the heart of it is community spaces to connect people together, taking traffic off the front of that promenade, to bring the town centre and the front together, to have a metro link there, to redevelop Cosy Corner, to have a new school in the area, to have homes and also a proportion of them to be affordable, and to have leisure opportunities. Now, all of that is set out in that placemaking strategy very clearly as an integrated vision, and we did that work with the community. However, what we now have to do is layer on the detail of that on top. So, for instance, when we talk about Griffin Park and what we want to do there, we want to consult with the public and say, right, these are our ideas. It's going to be 8 acres. What is it you want as the public? Do you want a pump track? Do you want children's play? Do you just want somewhere to sit and enjoy a book? You know, do you want to retain the trees in the Monster Park? And the same as the place at Salt Lake. We want to ask those questions. The same with when we talk about the infrastructure and the active travel links and the footpaths and the community spaces, and also the same when we talk about the leisure uses. Now, all that layer of detail has to come on top, and that's what the next step is. But the appropriation itself, all the appropriation does, it's a bit of planning legislation that allows us to consider the use of that area for the future. What is it we want to do in that area in the future? It removes the caravan park allocation and it allows us to think outside the box. Now, one of the comments that was made is, why do you need to appropriate all the land? And I think that's a very valid question. I think that it really is. Now, the reason we need to appropriate all the land is, as yet, we haven't got any planning permission in place or any definitive decisions on what area we want for open space, what area we want for a school, what area we want for housing, or where the roads will be. We don't have that level of detail yet. And whilst we think that we want to put that linear park right through the site, when we consult with the public, they might come back and say to us, maybe you don't want to do that, maybe you want to do something different. And that's absolutely fine. But if we leave parts of that proposal out of the appropriation and leave it as a designated caravan site, we are predetermining what we can do with the site in the future. So what is a much clearer thing to do is to have all of the area included, then do all our consultations, then put our planning permissions in. And of course, the public can come back on the planning permissions and the consultation and then get a holistic view of what we want to achieve. But I think it was a really good question, and perhaps we didn't cover that enough in the Cabinet report. And when I saw that question come forward, I thought, gosh, yeah, we should have covered that. So absolutely, I totally understand. So that's why we need all of that area. If we left areas out now, we would be predetermining what we could use it for. When we look at the 5 ways of working, that goes without saying is absolutely integrated into everything we do. What we are doing at Porthcawl is ensuring a sustainable future for our young people. Absolutely. What we're trying to do is to create homes, create environments, create parks, create jobs, employment, tourism for our future generations. And within the Cabinet report, we refer to it in a number of areas, actually. Bear with me. sections 2 and 7 of the Cabinet report. We talk about it in detail, how it's embedded. Actually, we also talk about the Human Rights Act as well, within paragraphs 4.41 to 4.47. So those things, I could go through each category if you want, but just to assure you, those things are there. I could give a written representation if some of what I've said isn't enough. I'm very happy to offer written reps to you on that. So just to say, I suppose, before I ask my colleague, Jacob Lawrence, to come in, because what I would like, Jacob, is to give you some visuals, Councillor Bledsoe, because what I do find is Councillor Farr is right. When you see these things on plan, they can feel very cold and very austere. But when you actually start walking through the site and see the size of some of the things we're proposing, it makes a little bit more sense. But what I would say before I pass over to my colleague is that, once again, this is not predetermining the use. This is just about appropriation, a piece of legislation, ensuring that when we come to planning permissions, when we consult the public, we can have a mixed-use sustainable development on this land. Now, one thing I will say before I go and pass over to Jake is that why have we considered this in separation from the CPO and from the placemaking strategy? Well, the placemaking strategy was the first bit of the jigsaw that we had to get in place. And then what was clear from the placemaking is we had to have a compulsory purchase order, because there are some areas of land in the vicinity, lanes, etc., that don't have any title, as in nobody owns them. So we needed to clean up the title of this land. And that compulsory purchase order, that has gone off now to PEDU, which is Welsh Government, and they are having an examination and going to consider, are we compulsory purchasing these areas for the right purposes, for regeneration, for holistic purposes. Now, we didn't want to start the appropriation consultation at the same time as the CPO because we didn't want to confuse the two. Whilst some areas of land are the same, they are two different pieces of legislation. Appropriation is a planning bit of law, and the CPO is a property piece of law, and they're very different in their characters. So yes, they do overlap and refer to particular areas, but they're very distinct in their character. So what we wanted to do was to ensure that the appropriation was felt as separate, and the understanding was it was a separate piece of legislation. And what we did feel, and this is very easy thing to do, is these things very easy to confuse one or the other. And I have to admit as well, we've done an awful lot of plans and strategies for Porthcawl. I've only been here 2.5 years, and there's cupboards full of them. So it's totally understandable how you think, well, heck, which one is which? So the important pieces are the LDP allocation, critically important, that's the top level. Then the placemaking strategy, which sets out what we'd like to do where, and then the two bits of legislation slot in underneath. The appropriation, which we're discussing today, and that's not predetermining, and the CPO is just to make sure that we can control areas of land that form part of the development. So that's the difference. So whilst I understand Councillor Williams' concerns, the reason we held them separately was we didn't get they didn't get conflated. So I hope, Chair, that has given you some explanation, and hopefully I've answered and added to what my Cabinet member has said. But do you mind if I ask my Regeneration Officer, Jacob Lawrence, to come in and maybe show you some slides of the appropriation land? Because I think that would make some of the comments that the public made clearer about loss of open space, wildlife ecology, the size of Griffin's Park, and show that we've listened and hopefully reassure you. So
I'm happy for Mr. Lawrence to come in. However, I can see that Leader has his hand up. So I just briefly want to bring Leader in to see what Councillor David has to say. Hello, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I think most of the points have been covered by the Corporate Director for Communities and obviously the Cabinet Member for Regeneration. But I wanted to emphasise the point about the principle and policy framework that is well established for this site, this area, and these proposals, and that framework and context does stretch back to 2004 when it was first included in the UDP, Unitary Development Plan, subsequently in 2013 in the Local Development Plan. But most importantly and most relevant to us today is the placemaking strategy that we consulted on, just as we consulted on and predecessors consulted on the UDP and the LDP. We consulted extensively on the placemaking strategy. I attended the very busy face-to-face consultation that took place at the Grand Pavilion. It was really heartening to see the level of engagement that there was and there is in this process in Porthcawl. People feel very, very strongly about the future of the town. And then, of course, most recently, this authority, all the members here approved the policy framework. This is specifically referenced in the replacement development plan that we all recently considered as council, and the principles and policies around this site were there for us to see and support around a mixed use development for Sandy Bay and Coney Beach. In terms of the open space, I think it's important that we recognise that we have responded to much of the public consultation. So the plans are very exciting to more than double the size of Griffin Park and extend that from its western edge at the northern end of Salt Lake all the way to and connecting it to the Relic Dunes. Members will also know and appreciate that as part of these plans, we are maintaining, we're enhancing and we're protecting the Relic Dune. So that's 6.4 acres of public open space that will be very important to the town in the future. And in addition to those areas, we will see further public open space as part of this mixed use development, because of course there will be, and this will be subject to the planning application, children's play areas, pocket parks, public open green spaces that will be interlinked and connected to the Relic Dunes and to Griffin Park via a comprehensive active travel network that is a statutory requirement. A statutory requirement I welcome and support, but it will enable the site to be a truly integrated a development that will enhance the opportunity for walking, cycling, promenading, and that will be not just for visitors, but of course for local residents as well. So they are the points I wanted to cover around the principle and plans, and obviously as a cabinet we had a comprehensive consultation report, and each and every representation was addressed in that consultation report, and much of it was indeed representations, similar representations to representations we received and considered in the placemaking strategy, and indeed were representations, very similar representations that all members considered, I'm sure, as part of the local development plan process, which this is part of as well. I think now's the time to invite, if that's okay with you, Chair, the the principal regeneration officer to provide those visuals, because it is much easier, isn't it, to have those plans in front of members, so that it can help with those questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor David. Yes, if I can bring Mr. Lawrence in. However, can I just ask Mr. Lawrence to be mindful of time, because the meeting has already gone on for 3 hours. I appreciate it's quite a long meeting for members, and I'm aware that some members who are part of the call-in have to go at 2 o'clock. So I do want to hear from you, Mr. Lawrence, but equally as well, we've got the public speakers and then the councillors to come back to ask questions. So if I could ask you to be brief, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. I'll be as brief as I can. Just give me one moment, please. I'll just pull up a few drawings.
Absolutely, and it's not to clip your wings.
Yeah, no problems at all. I'm happy with brief.
Cheers.
So, can everyone on the call see what's on screen here?
Yes, I can.
So what this drawing is, this is Appendix 3, and I'll just zoom into the relevant areas of Griffin Park and the extent of Griffin Park. This drawing is a diagram that's been taken from the placemaking strategy that was approved by Cabinet back in March of this year. And as explained by others, the placemaking strategy provides that next layer of detail, essentially a framework for development in accord with the LDP allocation that's been on the site for a significant number of years. Now, what this drawing does show, where you can see these areas of green and the arrows looking east and west, this shows the proposed framework for the extension to Griffin Park, which would be delivered as part of the overall regeneration. And when we talk about doubling the size, the key additional areas of Griffin Park is the area that's where my cursor is now, I'm highlighting, which is currently the vacant, unoccupied, inaccessible to the public former Monster Park. And then also a section of the Sandy Bay land itself that connects up to the Relic Dunes. So just alone this area of Griffin Park and the extended area equates to 8 acres. So that's double the existing 4 acres size. But then what's quite important, the leaders mentioned previously as well, is in addition to that, the Relic Dunes would be maintained. The Relic Dunes serve a really important ecological function. They actually act as natural flood defences as well. And that's additional 6 acres. So just this green area alone, what we're looking at is circa 14 acres. But if I may, and I'm mindful of time, just draw attention to also the area of land that can be seen here essentially in yellow. Now, this is also proposed open space within the council's land holding on Salt Lake and westwards towards the town centre and Dock Street. So this is in addition to that 14 acres across Griffin Park and Sandy Bay. So as can be seen by this drawing, a substantial area of the overall regeneration area is indeed open space. And what I think is important to note is what the inclusion of these spaces allow as part of the proposals is qualitative improvements as well as quantitative improvements. So that's probably quite an important point to note. But I was asked to be brief, so I'll stop it there. These other drawings I can bring up in relation to other points there may be questions on. So Chair, just let me know if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. That's very good of you. Thank you. I'm going to move to point 4, and I will invite the public speakers in turn to address the committee for a maximum please of 3 minutes each, with their representations on the call-in of the decision of the Cabinet made at its meeting on the 18th of October 2022. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen, and I'm going to come to the speakers in the order with which they contacted Scrutiny. So that will be Mr. Jamie Strong, then Mr. Don Tickner, then Mrs. Margaret Mahinick. So if we could start with Mr. Strong, please.
Hi there. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair, to talk this day. I've listened to obviously representations made by corporate community, Jane Nightingale, and the leader, etc. And there's a couple of questions I'd like to ask. So, going back to the question with regards to the proposed appropriation area and it being reduced, why could it not be reduced? Why are the Relic Dunes included in the appropriation? And why can we not reduce that area of housing on Sandy Bay to create further protected recreational space? The reason I ask this is obviously future generations. We are at this moment in time removing all opportunities in areas which are suitable, as I see it and others see it, you know, as in the end of Sandy Bay is beachfront, it is the perfect place. When we're talking about extended Griffin Park, when you look at that, you've got a road running straight through the middle of it. You've got blocks of flats proposed either side of it. It's not the desirable place as the frontage of Sandy Bay would be, and so that element I'd like to be, well, I'd like that explained. So going back to another point, I suppose, is never mentioned, is the fact that this land is part of an owner's agreement, and I'd like to understand where consultations, you know, how the efficacy of consultation on this land, you know, do we have any say? Is it all completely, you know, a done deal because, you know, as it's sort of noted in other documentation, you know, the appropriation enables the packaging of the land along with the CPOs so that they can joint market this land to developers and develop it. And obviously the sale of that land is shared 60-40 between BCBC and the joint venture partner. So, like I say, moving forward, you know, have we got our hands tied as a public? You know, are there opportunities for us to engage on that land at all? Or I would like, you know, BCBC basically to be honest with the public and say, no, all of that's closed off because this deal is in place. You know, there's not a lot we can do with that because it's already been pre-agreed. No, when we're talking about predetermination of the use of land, the LDP kind of predetermines for the number of housing units that are on there, although representations, you know, regarding the infrastructure, etc., I think are valid, you know, and through the planning process that will change over time, hopefully. But in removing the protection that's on that land at the frontage of Sandy Bay currently, is opening up all these other opportunities, and possibly removing the opportunity for my children and other children. Sorry, I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. I think you timed that perfectly, actually. Right, and there's a number of questions in there, so I'm going to allow the other members of the public to talk, and then if they have questions that come up as well, we'll then go back to the appropriate cabinet members or officers who wish to take those questions. So next on my list is Mr. Don Tickner, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Let's have a look at the council's record for consultation, starting with Griffin Park. In a letter to the Society dated the 21st December 2021, the Office of the Future Generations Commissioner said it is crucial when in developing plans, planning authorities engage with people in their own communities, facilitating a collective participatory process which focuses on achieving sustainable aims. This requires engagement which goes beyond the structured minimum of consultation set out in planning legislation and in accordance with the involvement principle set out in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So what does the Council's consultation consist of? An item in the Council's website, a notice in the local newspaper for 2 weeks, and notices placed on the site. While this presumably meets the statutory minimum for consultation set out in the planning legislation, we believe it falls well short of the criteria set out in the Wellbeing Act. It was only the involvement of the Town Council and the Voice for Future Port Call that resulted in 600 submissions. Unfortunately, this failure to meet the terms of the Wellbeing Act is indicative of a wider problem, as the Council also failed to enter into any real form of consultation when planning the food store and Cosy Corner. With Cosy Corner, the Council stated on the 3rd of August, the Civic Trust have had 2 opportunities to comment on the design of this scheme. One as part of the placemaking exercise, and secondly as part of the Cosy Corner planning application. In fact, Cosy Corner was not included in the placemaking exercise. We can't recall any mention of it in the 2-day exhibition at the pavilion, and there is no information regarding Cosy Corner in the ASL report. In any case, the latest plan was only published in June, well after the placemaking exercise was completed. Comments were invited at the planning stage, but this is normal procedure and in itself failed to meet the terms of the Wellbeing Act. There is a considerable body of evidence showing that residents are opposed to the 900 houses proposed for Sandy Bay, and for that matter 200 on Salt Lake. The appropriation of all the Sandy Bay will add to the danger of building those 900 houses. Residents will have no confidence that they'll be listened to at the planning stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tickner. Can I call forward Mrs. Mahinick, please?
Right, thank you very much. Sorry, just got to turn it on. I am speaking on behalf of the trustees, directors and supporters of our charity Sustainable Wales, which is actually in its 25th year. We're not against regeneration development. We just want BCBC to be the best that it can be. And my aim, again, like others, is to draw your attention to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015, Planning Policy Wales Edition 11, February 2021, and highlight briefly co-production. Our concerns are about the lack of evidence of a true understanding of the Act, which requires public bodies to demonstrate how their decisions meet the social, environmental, cultural and economic well-being for their community and Wales. And it is not clear if the 5 ways of working, especially involvement, has been interpreted in line with the legislation. Had it been the case, then we would have seen more than a consultation process. It's also not clear how a collaboration, integration, prevention and long-term have been utilised for the well-being of future generations of Wales and Porthcawl. The 5 ways of working are intrinsic to the planning system, and I'm quoting, it says, "It is crucial when in developing plans, planning authorities engage with people in their own communities, facilitating the collective participatory process which focuses on achieving sustainable places. This requires engagement that goes beyond the statutory minimum for consultation set out in planning legislation and in accordance with the involvement principles set out in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act." Co-production, I want to mention, this is a process where professionals work in partnership with people who have lived experience to inform, to redefine our shared visions and values, to share the responsibility to achieve mutual solutions throughout. The Act gives us a delivery framework for all council staff and elected members. It is asking us to do things differently, do things that are difficult and maybe not done before. There is a need for a more coherent approach to implementing the Act at every level and equal focus on policy, process and people. We can use the Act to galvanise new ideas, to share commitment and sustainable solutions that are owned by the community. It is transformational. It must be. We are all in this together for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and again, perfectly timed. Lovely. Right, I'm just going to ask the Senior Scrutiny Officer if we've got any written representations that have come in, please.
No, Chair, none that I'm aware of. Lovely,
Thank you. Okay, now there were a number of questions within those statements, and what I'm going to do, we're going to move to point 5, which is I'm going to ask the members who support the call-in notice if they wish to ask questions relating to the decision to the Cabinet member, the Corporate Director, the officers. And if you do wish to ask questions, can you raise your hand icon and I will come to you and speak to you in turn. Before I do that, though, very quickly, I'm going to ask Janine to come back in and answer. I believe the questions were about the dunes being included in the appropriation, the owner's agreement with the 4060 JV partnership, are the public's hands tied, and very swiftly, because it's a huge topic, about the 5 ways with the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. I believe the lack of evidence has been raised, that actually the 5 ways have been followed. So I just wondered if you could come back on that, please, Janine, before we go to the members. Thank you.
Yes, of course, Chair, and I'll try and be as brief as I can.
Thank you.
Mr. Strong, he made some very good points there. Just to say, the relic dunes is not going to change. We're protecting relic dunes, so that front of Sandy Bay is not going to look any different. I refer you back to the picture that Jacob showed us. The relic dunes will be protected for its entirety. We want to do that. Incidentally, the reason the relic dunes is included is, believe it or not, the relic dunes was part of the caravan park and it did have caravans on it over 20 years ago. And what has happened is that dune has rewilded. It was flat and had caravans. It's rewilded and become the dunes we know and love now. So our commitment is to retain the dunes as and only look at land inside. So just to say, the front of that site will remain as is, will stay the same, and we're committed to keep those 6 acres of dunes as is. With regard to the owner's agreement, it is, just as it says in the tin, an owner's agreement. Everything other than that needs planning permission, needs consultation. We will be speaking to the public. The placemaking strategy applies to all of it. We will be coming back to you with further detail on Griffin Park. We'll be asking you what things you want to see on there. So the fact that we have an owner's agreement does not fetter in any way what we can put on that site. And to be quite frank, everything that needs to go on that site has to go through the planning process and has to be approved. So please don't get hung up on, that's just about land ownership, the owner's agreement. It isn't about what we can do. And for sure, everything we do will be scrutinised, and rightly so. Now, with the point about consultation, I've met Mr. Tickner a number of times, Mr. Tickner, where I've become and met your civic trust, and I know that you are really concerned about consultation. What I will say is we do our utmost to consult as much as we can. We consult on the LDP, we consulted on the placemaking. The actual appropriation went over and above the minimum. We were meant to consult for 3 weeks, we did it for much longer. We put signs out, we put adverts out, we went over and above because we wanted to give everyone this opportunity to have their view. The same with Cosy Corner. We were slightly tied in what we could deliver there because it was all to do with Welsh Government grant monies that we had. We had to deliver a building for employment use, etc. What we're doing as a council is delivering open space, lots of community facilities, that one. And then what I will say to Margaret Mahinnick is absolutely, I totally agree with everything you said. Consultation is hugely, hugely important, as is co-production. I think that when we did the placemaking strategy, we did an element of co-production in that ASL, who were working with us, went out and met groups, met school children, came to met various groups, as well as the consultation we undertook. But what I would say is this is about appropriation. This isn't about the detailed plans. Those detailed plans come next when we talk about the design of Griffin Park, when we talk about the infrastructure. So as part of the next stage, that is when we really drill into that public consultation. That is when we would like to work with you and work with your groups and understand what, for instance, what do you want to do with Griffin Park? What do you want to see on it? Let's look at public open spaces, look at those areas. Appropriation is just about making sure that we can use that land for whatever we think is appropriate in the future. And that will be shaped by the consultation. So the appropriation itself isn't the detail, is it? The detail comes next, and I can commit to you today on this call that that is something that we will work with you on, because it would be foolish if we didn't, because we want to deliver a co-produced plan for what the community wants in Porthcawl. So it's just a mechanism to get us to the next stage. We've got a long way to go yet before we see this development, you know, any sustainable development that we'd like to see. So sorry, Chair, that was a little bit of a gallop, but hopefully I think I've covered those points that were raised.
Thank you. And I mean, we've gone off agenda a little way there with the answers to those questions that have been raised. So I can see that Mr. Strong has his hand up. However, Mr. Strong, I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid it is only the 3 minutes that you would be able to speak for. So I'm very sorry. I'm afraid you would have to put your hand down. I'm very sorry about that. I am next going to come to the members who supported the notice of call-in and see if they wish to ask questions relating to this decision with the Cabinet member, the corporate director, the officers, and for those members to raise their hand icon, and then I will ask them to speak in turn. I can see that Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins has her hand up, but she was not part of this. What I will do is I will come down the list of councillors who were part of the call-in, and then I will come back to you, Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins. So starting with Councillor Amanda, not a problem. Starting with Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I give my apologies first of all? I do have to be in another meeting with other group leaders at 2 p.m.
Not a problem.
So I've got a long list of questions, apologies, from the information we've been given today. I'll start with, I've got 2 questions for the Cabinet member, Councillor Farr, if that's possible, and then the rest are for officers.
I'm happy with that because it does say questions relating to the decision by the Cabinet member, the corporate member, or the officers. So you have a choice of all 3.
Okay, thank you. So my first questions, and I'm asking these to the Cabinet member because you represent the Porthcawl as well. So I wondered what your vision is for Porthcawl and what your biggest reservation about what is going to happen in Porthcawl are, please. And then I'll move on to my questions for the officers.
Sorry, Chair, it's Councillor Lewis. Just had a message. Councillor Farr can't unmute her laptop, so she's not going to be able to answer.
That's a pity. Okay, not a problem. Perhaps if Councillor Williams would like to put her question in writing to Councillor Farr, Councillor Farr could answer the question in writing then.
Yes, that's great. And if we could share them with everyone who's here, including the members of the public, I think they would also like to know what the responses were, because I think it's critical as she represents Porthcawl as well. It gives a balanced view of what people want in Porthcawl.
Not a problem. Right. I'm content with that. Thank you.
Right, I'll start with my questions then for officers. My first one, Janine raised it. I was going to say, why is it all this land being appropriated? And Janine said that you're probably going to ask, why is all this land being appropriated? And she said that it's a good question that wasn't answered at Cabinet. I'm disappointed that it wasn't raised at Cabinet, given the amount of public responses to this, because I would have thought it was a pertinent question for Cabinet to ask. So if I go down my questions then, so Janine has answered that one. It's disappointing it's led to a call in to get the answers to that. But on that basis, if you look at Aberavon, you look at Pontypridd, you look at Cardiff Bay, Pontypridd isn't even on the waterfront, and yet they've got fantastic facilities. And my concern here, I'm sure, which is the same as residents, is we have a chance to not only compete with our neighbours, but we have a chance to outshine them and stand heads and shoulders above them. They have these splash parks and everything. I've seen nothing in any of this referred to having any of these facilities. And if we go on to the, I think Janine and the leader both said how much said about this. This is a draft plan. It's not set in stone. But I wonder how much this draft plan has cost to produce, and what would it cost to rip it up and start again if it's not set in stone, and that the public have got a chance to get involved in the actual plans for this area, please. That's my first question.
Thank you. Janine, can I bring you in, please?
Yeah, of course. Actually, I've got a couple of questions down there, but I'll try and combine if I can. The reason the appropriation is a legal mechanism in planning just so that we can bring forward plans in the future with detail on it. There's no detail yet because we haven't done the consultation with the community. We just know high level what we'd like to achieve, but we don't have that detail, Councillor Williams. And that's the whole point of this. It's a stepped process. So at the moment, yes, I would love to think that we could be better than some of the communities you described. And our ambition is to be better, to be a premier waterfront tourist destination, a premier waterfront town, a place to live. That is our ambition, to do that. So as yet, we haven't layered on that detail. What you have got in that placemaking strategy and what you have got in the LDP are frameworks, development frameworks. And within that, we now need to layer on the detail. And a very important bit of layering on the detail is speaking to the public and consulting with groups and co-production and everything we've talked about in this meeting so far. So the reason you don't see any of that detail is we haven't got there yet. That detail isn't available because we're working on that, and we'll work on that with the public. The appropriation itself is not the detail. The appropriation is the start, is the legal mechanism to allow us to bring forward detailed plans for that area. They're two separate things. So we're at the first or second step of a long journey. What comes next is we build the detail, work with the community, build the detail. And what you will see coming forward in the months and years to come is the next step is to commission, for instance, an infrastructure report and a green space report. So what we want to do is to connect up the footpaths and get the spines, I suppose, is what you would call it, of the development. And then on top of that, then we layer this open space. And those are the things we want to speak to you and the public and the community next. We want to bring these plans and say, right, this is how we see it connecting. These are the green spaces. What is it you want to see? And then we bring on the next stage. So ideally, what we'd like to do over the next couple of years is implement that then, get the green spaces in, get the roads and the pavements and the active travel links in, get the community spaces in, get that space, and then build from that. So the reason you don't have that detail yet is we haven't developed that yet. That is the next step in the process. So hopefully that has answered why there isn't detail, because we're not there yet. This is just about ensuring legally we can change that from a caravan park into a mixed-use development, and that we consult the public on what it is they want to do there.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So realistically then, if it's not really, we haven't got the plan set yet, the road through Griffin Park, for example, may change because it's not set in stone. So something might come up and there's no need for those sorts of specifics because we don't have plans yet.
Well, sorry, Chair, do you mind if I come back in?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, Councillor Williams, what is key is that we get a road into that development site, because if we can't get a road into there, then we can't develop it out. Now, we can't come from the top end of the development site because it's through a residential community. So we do know that the only place that we can get a road in is into that area. The size, scale, direction of that road as yet, is that designed? No, it isn't. What we do know is that is the area via a roundabout at the start, just nipping off a slight corner of Griffin Park. That is how we will get into that development. There are no detailed plans of that, but that is the only access into that area. So what I'm saying is this is a framework for how we could potentially develop out. And the other thing that's important as well, we must realise we've got a local development plan and a commitment to deliver homes, and the number of homes is already set right across the borough. So we have to deliver those homes for future generations between now and 2035. We're committed to do that, and we're committed to use this land to do that with. But these need to be balanced, sustainable communities going forward. So back to the early question, the point of egress has to be through that end of Griffin Park, because we don't want to be coming through a residential community at the top end.
Thank you, Janine. Just very briefly, I'm going to ask the councillors if any of their questions are for Councillor Farr in her position as Cabinet Member for Regeneration, please.
Yes, sorry, I had two, but I had a question about that to Meryl then, if possible.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Councillor Farr?
Yeah, my question could either be answered by Councillor Farr or by Janine. One of my questions.
Okay. And anyone else? Councillor Clark?
Could I just say, Chair, that obviously the problem that Councillor Farr is having should be overcome by either switching off and switching back in, or getting IT to look at it. I think it's very, very important that the Cabinet Member is answering questions on this item.
Absolutely, I agree, because this is a calling of a Cabinet decision, and Councillor Farr is the Cabinet Member for Regeneration. I'm minded to suspend the session until we can get Councillor Farr back on the call.
And I would agree with that, Chair.
Absolutely. Meryl, Sorry, is Meryl on the call?
Sorry, Chair.
Thank you. No, it's fine. Are we able to try to resolve the matter with Councillor Farr, because there are a number of councillors who wish to ask questions?
We can email her to see if she can reboot, Chair, and see if that works. And
could we suspend? Could we suspend for 5 minutes whilst we do that, just to try to see if we can do that? If not, then we'll obviously have to move forward.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I'll just pop us into recess for a few moments until past and see if we can try to do this. Thank you.